I'm here in Auckland at the ASB Classic with a good friend of mine, Robbie Koenig, who we've known each other for a long, long time now. First came across Robbie when he was playing the Pro Tour, and there are fewer people who've worked harder in their career and with more enthusiasm than Robbie. And I'm pleased to say that Robbie's still as enthusiastic as ever about life, and it's absolutely fabulous always to talk to you because I love positive people, and I think you're a radiator. There are drains in the world, but you're definitely a radiator.
Oh, thanks, Dave. Thanks very much.
Robbie, can you give me give the listeners just a little bit of background of your tennis career, and then
Sure.
how you got into the situation you're in now with commentating and stuff?
Yeah, I was never a standout junior. I was always one of those guys who was ranked 4 or 5 in the country, and I think that helped me in many ways. That I learned to lose early on and handle adversity, and then when it came to under 18, I still had the desire to do well and work hard to try and improve, and I think that made my transition from the junior game to the senior game a good one. And although I was vertically challenged at 5'11", it was always going to be difficult to play good singles. I had some good singles wins early on in my career, but I never had the firepower, so my serve and volley game was always going to be tough as far as singles was concerned. And then, so obviously my game fitted well for doubles, and that's where I had most of my success. I won a couple of titles there. I was a semi-finalist at the US Open. And I'd always enjoyed being a student of the game, and I love the analysis side of it. And I think going from the pro ranks then into TV commentary, it was quite a good fit, Dave. I think naturally for me, having an analytical mind was always going to make it an easier transition. But in this game, you often just get thrown into the deep end, and you've got to cope yourself. And in many ways, that was a blessing. I'd done a little bit of commentary during Davis Cup, and then as a result of that, it helped me get the gig that I have now, commentating on pretty much all the major ATP events around the world and a couple of the Grand Slams.
Yeah, I must say I really enjoy your commentary. I think you're brave enough to go out there and ask some good questions of players, and I think that's an advantage. Where you're very straight shooting with your commentary, and I know from speaking to a lot of people that you're very popular as a commentator, and
Thank you.
Get better and better.
Yes, and I think you've always got to have that attitude of always trying to improve. And in fact, I quite like constructive feedback and negative feedback, because I always evaluate where it comes from, and certainly when it's coming from players or coaches, whoever it might be, especially people who I respect in the game, then I always try and take that on board, and I'm always trying to get better as a commentator. And in many ways, I enjoy social media from that point of view, because you have this ability to interact with fans now, and you're always going to get 10% of the fans that think you're the worst commentator in the world. The other 10% will think you're the best in the world, and you kind of throw those out, and then you get a feel for what the general population of tennis fan thinks of your commentary. And I'm always looking at that, and I like that feedback to try and improve and get better. So it's just like when you were a player, you're always trying to get better, enjoy that process of trying to get better. And I think if you have that attitude in life, it's going to serve you well.
Yeah, I think what you said there is so important. So many people shy away from the negatives, but actually, I, like you, really enjoy it when people that I respect are brave enough to be honest enough and say, look, have you thought about doing it this way? Or because that's the only way you really learn. And one of the things I try to encourage the staff at my academy is to challenge me, because if you're the head of something, generally people are afraid to challenge you, and that's a constant battle actually, to keep getting people in such a comfortable place that they are happy to challenge you, and that's something I think is important and I enjoy. Is there anything that you have taken from competing as an athlete into everyday life? In other words, what skills do you believe you took into life after tennis?
I have two sayings that I like to to repeat always to my kids, and it was something my dad said to me, and I try and live it out every day. And the first one was that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And the other one, Dave, was your attitude determines your altitude in life. And I think if you can live by those two mantras, then I think you're on the right path. Be the best you can be every day. I've just finished reading Sean Fitzpatrick's book, of course. So we're in New Zealand country, and I picked it up and I was reading it. And that was his motto as well. And I really like those simple words. Be the best you can be every day. And for me, that will help cover a lot of bases. I think that's, if you can have that as 80% of your core values, you're on the right path.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I often say to athletes that talent is just the starting line.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you
know,
more.
and then after that, it's about the work.
And we see that so often in the junior game, don't we? Where you've got these guys that are lovely shot makers at 14, 15, 16. But the moment the other guys start to catch up physically, then it becomes so much more than having these wonderful strokes.
Yes, absolutely. And I think perseverance as well, because like you're saying, what was it about attitude?
Determines your altitude. Yeah.
Now, I think a lot of people can have a good attitude for a period of time, but when they don't reach an altitude that they have an expectation of reaching, then they get very frustrated, and that starts to affect their attitude. And I have a saying which is, do the work and good things will happen. You just don't know when.
Yes, and I think you see that so often. I mean, me and you have been around this game for a long time, and you see a lot of the guys who end up making it on tour, and these days we're seeing guys make it at a lot later age. Exactly. And it's so often those guys who have just stuck around longer.
Yes.
They're not better than the guys who didn't make it. They just stuck around. Just good old-fashioned attitude, nose to the grindstone every day.
Yes, and experience then does start to count. You can be in a losing situation many times, and eventually you learn what you have to do in that situation.
Absolutely, and
if you've got the right attitude.
Yes, and if you don't enjoy that process of getting better, then you're always going to struggle.
Knowing what you know now, what would you have liked to have told yourself as a young player that you think could have helped you become a better player?
Good question. I think mentally I was always pretty good. I had a decent attitude, a hard-working attitude. But for me, it would probably go more to the technical side of the game. I had a coach in John Newell who was really good with the volleys. And it just shows you the importance of good technique from a young age. It wasn't as strong in other areas, but you look at guys like Ellis Ferreira, Grand Slam champion, multiple. Kevin Elliott, Grand Slam champion, multiple times. I had a decent volley. And there were many other guys who played great college tennis that all came under John's tutorship. And we had world-class volleys, I'm prepared to say, because of how well he taught us technically. Now, I wish I could have been taught better technically in other areas, especially the serve. Yeah. Me and you have discussed this on a number of occasions, and I have a look at junior tennis now because my boy's involved in it, and so often coaches neglect the serve at a young age because it's insignificant. It really is there just to start the point, but me and you know that when you get older, it becomes the most important shot in the game, doesn't it?
Yes. I mean, if you can't set up the point with a good serve now, I think you can forget about playing the game.
And it's difficult. So for that one thing in particular, I wish I had better technique, certainly on my forehand and on my serve. And secondly, I wish I'd understood the physical side of the game better. I was the kind of guy who just thought you had to train 100% every single day, and if you took a day off, then you were shirking your responsibilities.
Yes.
But, I was never educated about, first of all, how to train, what was good periodization, doing more intervals.
How important rest is.
Yes, as important, if not more important than actual training. So that's another area. I think I would have managed my injuries better, and I think I would have been a better athlete. Unfortunately, you can't teach height, because I would have liked that, Dave.
Well, I think growth hormone could have taken care of that.
Yeah, man, I wish I'd known about that a little earlier on.
Yeah. I'm not suggesting people go out there and take growth hormone.
No.
I think you've done very well. with all the tools that you had at your disposal, I think you pretty much maximized what you had at your disposal, and that's down to your attitude.
No, thanks, and I think it's always a nice compliment to receive. So thanks for that.
You've read my book, Locker Room Power.
Yes.
And at present, I think Novak owns the tour. And just as Roger Federer did in the mid-2000s and Nadal on clay for such a long time, there are players who seem to get ahead of the game and seem untouchable.
Yes.
Of course, somebody will come along and beat Novak. But at this present time, is there anybody that you can see being mentally in a place to start to challenge him? Because he's beating the very best in the world quite comfortably at the moment.
Yes, it's a good question. It's a tough question as well. I thoroughly enjoyed reading your book, and it gives you great insight into the dynamics that go on in the locker room. And as you mentioned there, so often matches are, I wouldn't say matches, but certainly sets are won and lost in the locker room by the presence you have. And I think a lot of that comes from mental fortitude. You gave me a great video to watch that I really enjoyed about power posing. For those people who haven't seen any of it or haven't heard any of it, you need to get in touch with Dave and listen to that, because that is fascinating. But right now I don't see anybody. I think probably the two guys that spring to mind are both relatively young. I think Milos Raonic is coming close in that he's got some serious firepower. 8 out of 10 times he's not going to probably do it because he's up against one of the best returners in the game that the game has ever had. But you need that firepower to bother Novak. We saw somebody like Karlovic do it 12 months ago in Doha. We've seen Wawrinka do it at the French Open, where he's got what I call that three-pronged attack. Huge serve, huge forehand, and huge backhand. Now, Raonic is not too far away, and I think he's growing mentally, beating Roger in Brisbane a couple of days ago. Again, that just elevates that belief, and the belief grows. But you know what it's like when you step on the court against a guy and you know that guy's record is incredible. The guy's almost unplayable at the biggest events. You know you don't have that same sort of experience. It's very difficult to overcome that hurdle at the first time of asking. And that's why I was so impressed that Wawrinka was able to win his first major at the first time of asking.
Yes, it's
and then he got the second opportunity,
and
he
he
did
took
it again.
that away as well.
And he's beaten the number 1 and 2 players in the world to do it.
Yes. Yeah, it's unusual. For most people don't win their first slam final. It's very, very difficult. That whole experience is so massive that it's hard to come to terms with it. But sometimes I think the first chance is the, nothing's easy, but the easiest chance, because you do have the fear factor if you get to a final for the first time. And if you can overcome all the stuff that comes around it and the idea that you're in a Grand Slam final, I think sometimes that could be, the easiest one. But very few people are able to overcome all the things around it, to put their best game on the court, because suddenly in the final they're starting to really think about it.
Yes.
I mean, there are a number of players, Torzier comes to mind, Kevin Curran comes to mind, that, were so hyped and so happy to be in a final, and afterwards really regretful because they didn't grab the chance when it was there.
Yes.
And when players are younger as well, they tend to think maybe that it'll happen again, but it might not ever happen again.
Yeah, 100%
and that's where someone like Boris Becker, amazing, did take the chance, playing against Kevin. But I remember discussing with Kevin, and he felt that it was his time.
Yes.
But he said something very interesting, that he had always dreamed of being in a Wimbledon final, and hadn't dreamed of winning it.
Yeah.
And felt that maybe was an error as well.
I want to pick up on that point that you make there. My advice, if I was coaching somebody who was in a Grand Slam final for the first time, I would encourage them to be almost bordering on reckless early on in the match and just let it all hang out. Because if you have a look back in history at the players who have won majors the first time of asking, if you have a look at somebody like Boris against Kevin, that guy was swinging from the hips from the first ball. You have a look at somebody like Marion Bartley. Similar story when she was. Francisca Schiavone when she won. It was incredible. Stan, when he's won, swinging from the hips.
I mean, that whole match against Novak at the French just never, ever pulled back at all.
And let's not forget as well, who was the other one I was thinking of? Juan Martín del Potro against Federer. Federer had chances to put him away, got it all the time. Juan just kept on going for it and eventually turned things around. And the trick is, once you keep going for it and you start to win, you got to keep going for it.
Yes.
And you know, if I'm the coach, I would be extremely vocal to my player. I'd be literally standing up in that box and tell him, "You keep bloody swinging from the hips, because that's the only way you're going to get it done." Even when Sam Stosur won the U.S. Open, it's another one that springs to mind. She was just ripping, and I think you've got to have. If you lose, you've got to lose swinging, not being passive.
Yeah, because I think you have no regrets then if you go out swinging. And the thing is, you've got to be hitting the ball well, otherwise you wouldn't be in that final. So I think there's very little risk in playing recklessly, because you'll be seeing the ball pretty damn well by the time you get to the final.
I think recklessly is a word we've got to be careful of.
It's not stupid.
No, aggressively to safe spots. That's got to give
big targets.
Yes, got to give Miles McLagan props for that. I mean, it hurts me to do that, but I have to. It was a saying that he told me many years ago, and I really like that terminology. Under pressure, hit the ball aggressively to safe spots. Yeah,
I mean, the one person that I think could, maybe it's a little early still, but who could trouble Novak is Nick Kyrgios.
Yes, I agree.
Because he has that recklessness about him.
Yes.
He has the big weapons. He likes the big stage. I think he's one of these that is potentially, I think, a number one tennis player.
Yep.
So much comes with becoming a number one tennis player mentally and maturity and all of that. And who knows whether he'll ever put it all together to do that. But certainly game-wise, I think he's one of the few players who can kind of like standard at the French. He can take it out of Novak's hands almost.
Yeah, I agree with you, definitely. The only, if we were having a debate about this, the only thing I would say, yes, he could be a future world number one, but I don't see him being the world number one like what we've had now, where he would dominate the game for 2 or 3 years. I think he would maybe dip in for 10 or 12 weeks, but then, because his game is so up and down at the moment mentally, he could go on a run for a couple of months, play well, maybe a couple of slam finals, win one, but then I think you'd see him drop off again. I don't see him being a consistent world number one yet.
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, people have to mature, and who knows,
exactly
how that process will go for him.
Yep.
But he certainly has the firepower.
No doubt. No doubt.
To do it. Serena, on the women's side, has the locker room in a similar place.
Yep.
But there are times where she gets extremely nervous and will allow players to come at her. If she doesn't, she's very hard to stop.
Yeah.
But certainly Azarenka seems to be coming back to form.
I agree.
And I do think she's the one mentally who can challenge Serena.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the start of the year for her has been a good one. And I think, we talk about dealing with adversity, Dave. I think when you've been through what Victoria's been through over the last 18 months or so, it really helps you to appreciate your craft. And I think she's enjoyed the process of getting back, and she appreciates what she's been able to do previously.
Yeah.
But I think she's even more motivated now than ever before to show that she's the real deal. And I think that's why 2016 is going to be a great season for her. And like you said, she's got the mental fortitude. She knows she can beat Serena on the big stage.
Yes, and I do see her as one of the players who actually can take the mantle of being a number one. Kvitova is very in and out, and certainly has a lot of game. But to be a number one, there's that consistency that very few people can actually bring to the table, and that's why I think the top four of the last years in the men's, with Federer, Murray, Rafa, and Novak, has been so phenomenal, because their consistency. I mean, how many first or second round losses do these guys have on their CV?
I mean,
it's just phenomenal, you know.
And when you see how small the margins are between players, it makes it even more remarkable.
Last question for you, Robbie. Where do you see the next generation taking tennis? Because, you know, all through time there have been players that seem to transcend everyone.
Yes.
From Rod Laver to Jimmy Connors, Borg, McEnroe, Lendl, Sampras, Federer, and now Novak. But history shows that somebody will take it to another level. And that question is, you know, what is it that you think will allow them to play at another level from Novak? Because right now it seems almost impossible. But I remember watching Sampras at his best, thinking it's almost impossible. And
then the next generation comes and beats his record.
Fed, you know, it seems impossible. But I mean, Fed's record, you know, is, you know, I think slightly in danger from Novak, because over the next 2 years, I'm not sure I can see too many people beating him. You know, and you know, if he wins, you know, 3 slams a year, so, you know, he'd be up at 16.
I hear you. And his winning percentage against the top 10 is better than anybody else throughout the course of his career. So he is beating the best players in the world on a more regular basis than the likes of Federer and Nadal and Sampras and everybody else who came before him. So, I mean, that's an incredible question. Where does the game go? I think Roger Federer was ahead of his time in that he took the ball so early. So I think in order to be a world-class player and dominate the game, you have to play the way Roger plays. You've got to take the ball so early. You've got to have a great serve as well. That's mandatory these days, I think. But I think you're going to have more and more players being able to transition better, Dave. I think there's still a gap in the market there. I think the top players do it pretty well. Federer does it better than most. Djokovic doesn't get enough credit for how well he finishes points off at the net and how good his volleys are. But I think that's going to come back more because guys defend so well. So I always ask myself the question, what is the antidote to a great defender? Well, I think you have to attack him, and you've got to take time away from him. So how do you take time away from him? Well, you take the ball early from the back of the court, like Federer does. And when you've got them on the move, you have to back yourself with decent volleys. I think this generation of player doesn't volley nearly well enough. Yes. And I think with decent coaching, they need to understand the off-the-ball movement in order to be better volleyers. I think they're very poor in that department, and just get better technically.
Yes, I think players have relied very much on just finishing points at the net with a volley high up over the net. I think the craft of actually volleying from below the level of the net is something that's, you know, missing at the moment. And I think if players can ghost in and still pick up some tough volleys and do something with them, then you know, that's a slightly different animal. And you know, it's going to be interesting to see where that person's going to come from and when or how it happens, because they have, you know, that sort of player is going to be maybe 15, 16 now.
Yes.
You know, and you know, or whether you know players at the highest level always adjust and evolve.
Correct.
So maybe, you know, one of the players that are, you know, young, like a Kyrgios or a Zverev or that sort of generation of player is going to find it for themselves. Yeah.
You know, I was just thinking as well, I'd throw Dominic Thiem into that category as well. Definitely on a clay court. I think he's a future world number one. But I really do think as well athleticism is going to be a very important part of the game, and it's going to continue to be. I think flexibility in sport is underrated. In our sport, I think we've seen it with Novak, how important it is. I've seen in a lot of other sports that flexibility is very important, and it'll help with your agility. And I think just my final thought on that is I think that the ATP also needs to be responsible, and the tournament directors in particular need to be responsible in speeding up the court surfaces. Because, you know, if you have a look at technology, the rackets are very much in favor of the baseliner. The string technology, which has been probably the biggest move forward, is massively in favor of the baseliner. So the one thing the court surface, the one thing that we can control, even that's in favor of the baseline.
Yes.
The courts are so slow these days that it's so difficult to serve and volley or hit meaningful volleys and put baseliners under pressure. So I think is a big responsibility.
Because even grass has slowed down so much.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
so
you
there's a
know.
big responsibility on the tour. Why should somebody be discriminated against because they have
Well,
good
on
volleys?
all surfaces.
Yeah,
you
because
know,
they have
I mean,
good volleys,
there's the
you know.
clay courts that are always going to be slower.
Correct.
So there should be some, and you know, indoor courts and outdoor hard that are a bit quicker. You
And
know,
have your times of year. Let's
Yeah.
say, you know,
a fast indoor circuit or
Indian Wells in Miami,
Yeah.
you can have a slightly slower, but then leading
Yeah.
up to the US Open,
Yeah.
which is always historically the fastest hard court that we played on outdoors, you know, those tournaments, Cincinnati and Toronto, those should be much faster hard court surfaces leading into the US Open,
Yeah.
which is a fast hard court.
yeah.
And I think that way you've spread it nicely.
Can I end by asking you, you know, what is your inspiration, belief, or anchor? The things that give you optimism and enthusiasm for life every day.
My dad was an incredibly positive person, and I've always tried to have an attitude of gratitude. So I think it's so easy to focus on other people and, I wish I had some of that. I wish I could be as rich as that guy. I wish I could be as tall as that guy when I play tennis, whatever it might be. And rather look
You
at...
can't be as tall as me. I'm sorry.
I know. I pay good money
But
for it.
I tell you what, in an economy aeroplane, I wish I was as small as you.
Too true, Dave, too true. But I always try and focus on how lucky I am to have what I do have, and how much I love my job, and that I'm fit and healthy every day. And I try to keep perspective in life, and whenever I think I'm getting a little too big for my boots, I'll always watch an inspirational maybe video or something. It'll just bring me down to earth, and man, I'm lucky to have both arms and legs. Simple things in life. It's only when you get sick that you realize how important health is, and those are the kind of things that keep me positive and keep me very grateful for what I have, and hopefully try and share the love. You know, I always think what you give out to people is what you get back. And that's pretty much my philosophy about how I go about living life.
I think it's a great philosophy, and I'd like to take you up on one of your points, is that, you know, you'll watch an inspirational video. I mean, there's some fantastic podcasts out there these days. Hopefully, people enjoy this one.
Yes.
But when you have a diet of this inspirational stuff, I think it does keep you thinking, and as you say, it does keep your feet on the ground, because there are so many brilliant people in the world. It's amazing. And one of the things I try to say to my players is, you know, if your toilet is flooding, you don't need a great tennis player to come around your house. You want a great plumber. You know, and being a great tennis player is fantastic and a great achievement. But you know, there are great plumbers, electricians, and everything, and in different situations in life, you need different great people. 100%. You know, and you know, it's sad when people are brilliant at something and they almost seem to take on the persona that they're brilliant at absolutely everything.
They know everything about everything. Yeah.
And you know, I think when you read good books and listen to good things and watch good things, you certainly realize how brilliant so many people are in so many different fields of life. And I find that fascinating and wonderful, really.
Yeah, and just it puts what you do into perspective.
Yes. Robbie, an absolute pleasure. Thanks very much.
No, anytime.
And you know, enjoy the rest of the week, and you know, let's see if we can grab some dinner in Melbourne.
Yeah, looking forward to a fantastic 2016, and we'll listen to this in about 9 months' time and see how everything is shaken out. Look forward to it, Dave. Thank you very much for having me.
Cheers.